which before building this PC, I thought it would do worse than it actually did. The FPS was actually incredible for the money that we're spending here today. Today, we are going to be building one of the cheapest, but also easiest gaming PCs to play the new Diablo 4 at 1080p, Full HD, high settings. Now for this, we've got a mix of new parts, which for the new parts, we've got the Intel Arc A750, which as of the time of making this video, you can pick these things up for under 200 bucks, making them extremely good value for money, especially for playing some of the latest gaming titles. Then we've got a 1TB SSD and a brand new case, which in this instance is called a Dark Flash DK352. It's got some fancy RGB bling, tempered glass side panel, but you may notice there's also this PC on the floor here, which we are going to get to work on soon, which is a used OEM system, and you can pick these up on eBay for usually a little over. If you're lucky, you can get it for a little under $100, and this features an i7 6700, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, a 650 watt power supply, motherboard, and a cooler. Now this one in today's video, we got this for a little over $100 in a used PC parts hunt that we did on the channel here, and I'll put the link to that video up here if you want to see how to get some of these deals. So we'll start cleaning this thing up and getting it ready for the final PC build, but I'll also show you guys the tally of all the prices we paid for this stuff, so you shouldn't be spending really any more than what I'm showing you on the screen here. So let's get to work on this PC right after today's video sponsor.
Never pay full price for Windows 10 or 11 again. With today's video sponsor, SCD Keys, you can get activated for as little as $15 using that coupon BFTYC. Links in the description below.
So we've now got all the parts laid out, ready to start this gaming PC, and this motherboard, the CPU and the cooler, that all came up looking like it was brand new. And before we built this PC, we also tested it out, and it also came with a guarantee from the shop that we bought it from, which is pretty important. If you're going to be installing used parts, do make sure that they work before you build the PC. That way you'll be saving yourself some time, and you'll be saving yourself a lot of hassle if something is potentially not working. But with that aside, let's build this thing up quickly and see what it looks like. Now I also might use some custom white cables in this, which will add around, I think around $16 to $18, depending on where you live. You can get some custom white cables just to spruce this build up a bit. And really, when it comes down to it, after I'm done with this PC and we're done testing out the performance, I'm going to be flipping it too. So we have finished this gaming PC and it is looking absolutely mint. Do let us know in the comment section below what you guys think, but I've already run into one problem, and that is that we're using an H170 motherboard. And the problem there is that our memory speeds are actually limited to 2133 megahertz. So I actually didn't realize this because it's been a long time since I've used a Skylake and the architecture. So if you can, try and go for a Z170 motherboard, especially to get your memory speeds up. As in this case, we still have one out to get more performance, and that is we are going to drop down our DDR4 timings as low as possible in the BIOS. So we're gonna see what we end up with. But in the meantime, we also had a problem with the Intel Arc GPU in that For me to show you the settings, I'm gonna have to use my camera rather than a capture card. So Intel and AMD GPUs don't have this problem with a capture card, at least in the BIOS screen. The Intel Arc GPU just straight up refuses. It's got a HDCP error showing up on the screen if you're trying to use a capture card. So hopefully in another generation of GPUs, Intel fixes this with the Arc GPUs. Though with that aside, we've just finished installing Windows. Let's see if we can get the games installed and what tuning we can do in the BIOS.
There was a prophecy, yes. It foretold the rise of the prime evils.
Not ready yet. I have no potions.
So finishing up Diablo 4, at least for a few hours, I am blown away. This game, it is expensive. It costs $70, but you are getting what you pay for with Diablo 4. And the best news about all this is you don't need a $2,000 PC to play this game. Since it's a Blizzard title, it's actually extremely well optimized from the get-go. I came into no hiccups, no stuttering, even on an i7-6700, which before building this PC, I thought it would do worse than it actually did. The FPS was actually incredible for the money that we're spending here today. The Intel A750 Arc, that's giving out really good FPS, but there are a few caveats with this GPU, and we'll get onto that after we talk about the CPU here, the i7-6700. It's absolutely fine for this game at 1080p, ultra settings or high settings. We're getting around 120 average FPS on high. Then if we step things up to ultra, we're getting around 100 average FPS. The 1% and 0.1% lows, that's the worst FPS you're going to see. That was really good, especially when we're in big battles and we need that FPS to perform well. I noticed there was, however, some hiccups in the 0.1% lows, some little bit of stutter, I guess, and that's when we're going into new areas and things are loading up. And I'm pretty sure this will be a thing on all systems out there because it's got to load a new area. However, when you're in battles and you're in clutch moments, even an i7-6700, which is over 5 years old now, is going to perform really well. And the kicker with this CPU is we didn't even tune it properly in today's video. We only were able to get the memory to 2133 megahertz on that DDR4, which is my own bad because going into this, I hadn't used Skylake, that's the 6th generation Intel architecture, for quite a long time, and we went with an H170 motherboard where if we got a Z170 we would have been able to get much higher memory speeds. But I did mitigate the performance degradation there by tuning our DDR4 memory even at 2133 megahertz speeds, and here's where we went into the BIOS and just dropped the timings down on the latency to CL10 1228, and this actually gave us really good performance coupled in with that Intel Arc A750. Now this GPU was getting maxed at 1080p in this title, Diablo 4. I also quickly tested Cyberpunk 2077 at high settings. That was giving over 70 average FPS. I also tested Warzone in the Battle Royale, and we're also getting it high between medium settings and a mix there. We're getting around average of 80 to 90 FPS. So this can play all the latest titles, even though the i7-6700 is a few years old. It'll be absolutely fine with something like an Arc A750 if you want to spend a few minutes tuning it. Now also in terms of the power consumption, and this CPU will use around 30 to 50 watts depending on the scene in the game, and the good news is it'll stay under 70 degrees most of the time while you're gaming, and that'll mean that the cooler can also put out low levels of noise, so it's not going to be annoying. So really surprised with what the Skylake systems can do with value line graphics cards, especially if you want to transplant it like we did here today and put it in a new looking build and couple it with a better GPU. Though, back to Diablo 4 and the Arc A750. Here is where if you can get this GPU for $200, it is going to perform really well. And I was getting FPS here, like we said before, 100 on Ultra and then 120 on high settings. However, there are some caveats to the Arc A750, and it's mainly got to do with the drivers. I will be making a separate video testing out Arc A750, comparing it against NVIDIA and AMD, and I'll put that in a separate video up here when it's ready. And I got to do more testing, but basically the drivers as it stands are okay if you just want to jump into the game and do nothing else. Just play the title, enjoy it as an end user gamer. Though back to those drivers with the A750, here is where straight away going in, every time you restart your computer, it'll reset the settings in the drivers. So if you've got capture settings there, it'll just reset them. Sometimes it'll even turn on the allow Intel to collect information randomly, which can, I feel, cause hiccups in your games, especially stuttering. So you want to turn that off, at least if you've got something like an i7-6700. Though the problems do keep piling on top with the drivers, in that there's no hotkey for capturing your gameplay footage on your desktop. So what I have to do there is Alt-Tab and start it, but the problem is in Diablo 4, when I was Alt-Tabbing, the game would either crash and sometimes it would just straight up blue screen. The drivers are really shaky at the moment, and even when I was booting up Call of Duty Warzone, it just flat out crashed its first time booting up. So that needs work, game compatibility, but there's also a setting that's enabled and you can't disable it. It's called HDCP. And essentially if you hook this GPU up to a capture card, you just flat out cannot use your capture card whatever you do, because there's no setting in the drivers to turn off HDCP. So that means I couldn't get any capture card footage for you guys today of the BIOS settings and things like that, as opposed to AMD and NVIDIA. NVIDIA just has it so it'll work with your capture card by default. AMD, you can install the drivers and then turn that setting off in the drivers, and that'll work on your desktop. But also with AMD, you can get into the BIOS and it works absolutely fine there too. So if you are doing anything besides just gaming and you want more solid drivers, I would go for the RX 6600 right now, or of course go for something like an RTX 3060 if you can get it at the right price. But in terms of raw value for the money, in terms of the FPS for what you're getting at $200, the Arc A750 is a really good buy. Though here's another problem with the Arc A750 that I also found, is that I couldn't undervolt the GPU at all. There's only the option to overclock it, which I would like to see that added in too, because I love undervolting, dropping the power consumption down, where in this case, from the wall while we're playing Diablo 4, we're using a little over 300 watts, as opposed to say using an RX 6600. I'm pretty sure I could bring that down closer to the low 200s, same with the RTX 3060. Now the CPU, we didn't really need to undervolt that at all, because I needed to get more performance out of it, especially because it was maxing out at 3.7 and 3.8 gigahertz. So CPU, absolutely fine. It's not really a problem, but I would like to see the option to undervolt the Arc A750 in particular, and also the Arc A770 if you're going that route, especially the 16 gigabyte, having a lot of VRAM for the money. And with all that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoyed today's Diablo 4 gaming PC. I wanted to build something that would just play this game at 1080p high or ultra, and in the end, I think we got a lot more than we bargained for with this PC. You don't really have to go out and spend a whole lot extra, especially on CPU and RAM, if you want to play this title. And it looks like the good news is, with this title, it's going to be lasting for a long time in terms of replayability. Blizzard have definitely done a really good job with this game. I'm much more impressed with this than I was over Diablo 3. Even though a lot of people enjoyed Diablo 3, I played it and finished it in a few hours. And of course you can go back and replay it and all that. But I just love that initial experience to be one of just on another level like Diablo, Diablo 2, and now I feel like Diablo 4 is too. Though that aside, PC, do let us know in the comments section below what you guys think of this. Would you chop and change some parts? If so, do let us know. Love reading those thoughts and opinions as always. And if you want some links to build something like this, I'll help you out in the comments section, actually the description below for this video. And with that aside, I've got to actually stop myself and stay away from this game. It's really enjoyable. It's one of the best games I've played in a long time, and I'm probably going to say it could even be the best game of 2023. That's how impressive it is. But Blizzard have done a great job in terms of optimizing this game, especially for PC users. I'm just left blown away. I'm playing this Druid class and I'm absolutely loving it, even though I would love to see Paladin class come in. The Druid class is so much fun. They've done a great job with it so far. The skill tree and everything involved is really fun. So I actually met with a Blizzard employee who is a viewer and subscriber of the channel in Taiwan, and they were telling me that everyone in Blizzard's really proud of this game too. So it's awesome to see the hard work's paid off there. So really good game. You guys are going to love it if you get it. Asking price is a bit steep there at $70, and I actually couldn't really find it on any CD key sites for cheaper either. It's actually the cheapest I could find it was directly from Blizzard, so it's $70, and that's what I had to cough up, and what you're gonna have to cough up if you want to play this game, but it's definitely going to be worth it. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this one. With that aside, we've got the question of the day, and sorry I didn't do these because I was in Taiwan for Computex. It was just so busy, and it comes from Mousy7216, and they say, great coverage. Couple of questions of the day for you. Do you visit computer electronic fairs and auctions? We used to have a lot of these in early 2000s, but not anymore. So to answer that first question, no, I actually don't. I've been told on where I'm from in Australia that there are some car boot sales where you can pick things up. But nowadays I just tend to go on marketplace sites, for instance, like Facebook Marketplace, and get used bargains from there. And also the next question is, do you know what the PC exhibitors do with their PC parts that are on display after they are done with them at places such as Computex? And the answer to that is a lot of the exhibitors, for instance, this keyboard, I don't know, sometimes they give the parts away, and in this case when I was at the Montech booth, they had this keyboard on display and I just clicked the keys and it was actually really satisfying. I was like, whoa, I've never typed on a keyboard like that before. And I just asked them, like, can I have this keyboard? I really want to use it. And they were like, you know what, sure. They asked around and they said, sure, you can take it after the event's finished. So sometimes they will give it away to people on the showroom floor, some of the parts, providing they're not too expensive. Like, for instance, I don't see them giving away an RTX 4090, but they will give away some of the cheaper parts and stuff like that. But also, say for instance, the RTX 4090s and stuff on display, a lot of times they will get sent back to where they came from, because a lot of booths, for instance, like ASRock, they'll borrow parts from other places and then they'll send them back, and then those parts will then go on to, say, another content creator or another place. So they've got these parts that they just keep recycling for events, and then by the time they're old news, they'll either auction them off themselves or they'll give them to content creators, whatnot, and then the content creators will probably use them in gaming PCs. So they do get used, and then they do get, after a while, sort of out of the cycle. So hopefully that answers that question for you guys, and hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button for us, and love reading your thoughts and opinions. As always, I'll catch you guys in the next tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.